Florida State fans have been pretty pissed off with ESPN over the last few days. Obviously, the conspiracy, the idea that they control what happens with the college football playoff, the idea that the college football playoff committee selected what would be the most favorable matchups for ESPN's broadcasts certainly lends itself to that theory. But not everybody at ESPN thinks the way that the mouse wants them to think, thinks that the way that Disney wants them to think or view this situation. And some ESPN employees, some very big names in college football, disagree very much so with what the College Football Playoff Committee and what ESPN have done. Not everyone is a mindless, spineless robot like Kirk Herbstreit, like Reese Davis, like Greg McElroy. There are some that can think for themselves, and to those people we say we appreciate you. And I'm going to show you some of their clips this week where they have gone on record calling out their employer. We're going to show some clips of some other very popular, very famous names within the sport and give you their takes as well. But the very first one that we'll show you is maybe one that surprises you a bit. A guy that won 2 national championships at the University of Florida, also beat Florida State a couple of times in a recent span. Dan Mullen, he made some of these comments on ESPN, but then we found them on a podcast a little bit more concise, and we certainly don't want to promote anything ESPN's done, so we'll show you this Dan Mullen clip first.
It's disrespectful to the game of football, and it's disrespectful not to the fans, not to people that play the game. I certainly hope people that play understand what I'm saying when you say it's disrespectful to the game. Florida State went out, played every single week, and they won. And they won with their quarterback. They won without their quarterback. They won with offense. They won with defense. They won big. They won coming back. They won in overtime. They won on Saturday against one of the with a third-string true freshman quarterback that hadn't played, and they were playing one of the best rush defenses in America. They rushed for almost 170 yards in that game. All that Louisville had to do was just score once. Touchdown. One touchdown, the game's over. Couldn't do it. In fact, not only could they not score, they had negative 23 yards of offense in the fourth quarter. That's Jeff Brom, a Jeff Brom team. You know, and everyone knows what a great coach he is. And they were held to negative 23 yards. They blocked a punt and got the ball inside the 10-yard line, couldn't score. That was as masterful a defensive performance as you will ever see in a team back to the wall performing. And I think it was disrespectful to the game of football that they got left out. And Alabama, there were 5 teams that earned the right to play. I don't like everyone says the best team. Well, we made clear that Oregon was the best team. Georgia was the best team, but they lost. So subjectively, they were the best. Objectively, they lost. So to sit there and take a team that did everything right, I think that was wrong. And
it was disrespectful to the game of football. I think that's an interesting take. I think that's certainly something that Florida State fans would agree with. I think that's something you're seeing a lot of people say and agree with, that we are letting TV numbers, TV dollars, TV matchups impact what games we get. It's no longer about earning your way into a championship, earning your way into competition, a playoff, and anything like that. It's just about TV. It's just about ratings. It's just about advertisements. Why do you guys think that they put the new clock rules into effect this year? We've whined and moaned and complained about that so that there would be less game time and more ad time. They didn't shorten the game windows. They didn't take it down from 3 hours to 2:45. No, there's literally less game time now, and they can sell more ads. And they've done it here with the playoff. And Mullen knows this is a complete disrespect to the game of football. How about a Heisman Trophy winner? What does RG3, another ESPN employee, calls games for ESPN? He's called several Seminoles games over the last couple of years. You guys can't stand him when he is calling games. What does RG3 think about this? Well, let's listen to his clip.
Robert?
Yeah, I mean, the committee got it wrong, and really their decision is final. It's over, done with. Not so much bothered by that anymore, although I thought it was a travesty for college football. I've been more so bothered by some of the coverage trying to excuse the decision by people in our industry.
What do you got?
And what has bothered me is the focus on the money. You know, we've had people talk about how it's all about the money and they're picking the best matchups to make the most money. And that's not their job. Their job is to pick the 4 best teams. And the 4 best teams is not based off the eye test or what conference you play in. The 4 best teams is based off of something that's extremely subjective, that includes conference championships, how many games you win, how many games you lose, comparative teams that you've played. And there's one thing that's not like the rest. And it's the fact that Florida State did not lose a game this year, regardless of who their quarterback was. And I think that they were wrong to not put them in. They're a Power 5 undefeated conference champion. That should trump anything else. And they should have been put in over Alabama. The discussion should have been between Texas and Alabama. And if the SEC wanted to get a team in, well, they would have had Texas, because Texas is basically an SEC school.
Well, they will be next year.
At this point, it is kind of funny to hear RG3 say it. It's honestly pretty truthful, too. I mean, you understand what he's saying and why he's carrying on like this. But I think it's interesting to point out that when they talk about the injury to Travis and they use that as a relevant factor to possibly exclude a team or rank a team lower, I think really the way that is supposed to be factored in, if you go and read the guidelines, it's among like teams. So if you had 2 teams that were both 12-1, but one of those teams had a conference championship, you're going to rank the 12-1 team with the conference championship over the non-conference champion 12-1. Perfect example of that is Alabama and Georgia. Both teams 12-1, both teams an SEC schedule, both teams very similar in the way they played, both teams very, very close and equal, but one has a conference championship, one doesn't. And so you allow the team with the conference championship to go on and you rank the other one lower. I think that's how you decide that. Florida State really should have been grouped with the top 2 teams in the country. You see, there were 3 13-0 teams. And so that should have been your grouping. Your grouping, based on what everyone is saying, based on their criteria, based on the way that the College Football Playoff Committee rules are written, your grouping should have been between 1 and 3. And if you thought, well, Florida State's not as good as Michigan and Washington now because they're without their quarterback, I think it makes sense. I don't think Florida State fans would have fought you about that. Now, who had a better resume, who had better eye test, who didn't have to steal signals to end up winning their games. Yeah, you could have all those arguments. But if you ranked Florida State 3 and you put them in that first grouping, I think you'd say, yeah, quarterback's out and makes sense. Florida State's probably not as good as those 2 teams. They'd be an underdog on a neutral field. Makes sense. But what they did was they didn't group Florida State with the other teams that they were like. They grouped them with the teams that they were clearly better than. They grouped them with the teams that were clearly below them in the pecking order. And not only did they group them with the wrong team, they ignored everything else about Florida State. They ignored strength of record. They ignored record against common opponents and the way they played against LSU versus the way that Alabama played against LSU. They ignored all those things, and they grouped Florida State with the wrong ranking, and they also used one criteria, the injury to the quarterback, the injury to a key player, to exclude them from the playoff, which is not at all how their directives, not at all how things are supposed to happen. They knew they had that as a crutch, but RG3 says they got it wrong. They weren't even close on this. Next up is another one that I think you guys will enjoy. Not an ESPN employee this time, maybe someday in the future, but one that we thought we'd throw in because it would just be fun. How about the best player in all of college football this year? And slight caveat, I think there's probably an asterisk there because Jordan Travis is clearly the best player in the country, as he's the only one to lead his team to 10-0 with no teammates. And he's the only one to be on a sideline to make his team 3-0 when they didn't put any other players out on the field. Pretty impressive by Jordan Travis to be a one-man team that never lost a game, according to ESPN. But maybe the second best player in the country this year, the probable Heisman Trophy winner, Jayden Daniels, had some thoughts on this one. Take a listen to what he said.
It sucked knowing that, they put all the work in and obviously they weren't rewarded for it. And, we played them week 1, so, obviously losing Jordan was a big deal for Florida State. And, I personally think Obviously, they kind of did it just because of, ratings and viewership and stuff like that. But, I think, that's a great football team there. Prayers out to Jordan and everything he's going through right now. Obviously, he's probably not in a good spot, having to, like I said, show it all the blame and stuff like that. Obviously, he tweeted something, but, it's not his fault. Obviously, he can't control stuff like that. So, I'm praying for him and, Florida State get what they deserve at some point.
The Heisman Trophy winner, a kid that's in the SEC, a kid that has played Bama twice, played Florida State twice, 1-1 against Bama, 0-2 against Florida State. Got to see both defenses in person. Got to feel both defenses against him. A kid that's in the SEC. And again, the best player in college football this year, Jayden Daniels, was phenomenal. Literally says they did it for TV ratings. When the 21, 22-year-old kids that are playing the sport in the same conference, right? Fans and these idiots that are on social media and stuff capping for the SEC, I get it. Like they're gonna beat their chest about the SEC. When the actual kids who are playing the games, a kid who played against both teams in back-to-back years says, we get it. They did it for the TV ratings. I'm in the SEC. I get it. They did it for the TV ratings. That's pretty strong stuff. When the kids can see it, the young adults, you guys sometimes have a problem when I say kids about athletes. They're all younger than me, so I don't feel bad saying it. When these young adults, when these athletes in the NCAA can see it, I don't know why it's so hard for everyone else to see it as well. Got a couple more that I want to get to and show you, but I met a lot of you in Charlotte. I met a ton of you, whether it was at the bar the night before, at the FSU party. We were all watching the women's soccer team going off. Met a couple of you in the stadium. One of you didn't say hi in the stadium. I'm always happy to say hello. Make sure that you come up and say hi in the stadium. I'm calling one of you out here, not by name, but you know who you are. Another one of you I met at breakfast the next morning. Had some great pancakes the next morning before my week was ruined because I didn't quite know what was coming about 3 hours before the committee broke our hearts. But I appreciate you guys that say hi out and about. Some of you guys ask, like, hey, how can we get more content? Well, I can't really do any more videos than I'm doing right now. So that's probably not realistic. But we do have a Discord you can join. We have a Patreon that you can join and get access to, like, inside info. We post a lot of recruiting and portal and just news on things like the Orange Bowl happening or not, things on meetings happening with conference realignment, just kind of whatever you're looking for, FSU oriented. There's about 3,000 FSU fans in that Discord. A lot of people just lurk and kind of watch what's going on. But if you want more of what you're getting on the channel, go to patreon.com/DFNS. Really easy to remember. Patreon.com/DFNS. Sign up there and join us in the Discord. Now, listen, if we're out and about, if we go down to the Orange Bowl, come say hi. Come hang out. Come tailgate. Don't come say hi. I love interacting with you guys. It really is awesome. And I appreciate you guys a ton for the support, the growth of the channel, all of those things. It really is a lot of fun doing this. Hasn't been fun this week, but the other 51 weeks this year have been fun. So, all right, next up, let's stay in the SEC. Again, not an ESPN employee, but let's go with this one. Eli Drinkowitz, the head coach of Missouri, was recently on a radio show, and we'll show you his clip, but he sounded a lot like Jayden Daniels. Roll that one.
If we're going to really have hard conversations, let me ask you this. If a team in the playoff has a star player injured, are they going to be removed from the playoff and then we put Florida State back in? I mean, that to me was complete nonsensical rationalization. And I know I'm an SEC guy, but that one bothered me a whole lot. And then to not factor in maybe a team having an unfair advantage in some of their games, it just seemed like to me we were picking and choosing what lens we were going to look through.
Yeah, so a little subtle shot at Michigan there, maybe not so subtle even from Drinkowitz on that. But yeah, again, another SEC guy that tells you we just pick and choose what we want. We just pick and choose what we want in there. Thought it was unfair, didn't think it was the right thing. And now you've got multiple SEC guys. What I've found is Alabama fans think this decision was great. Texas fans think this decision was great. Florida Gator fans and Miami Hurricane fans think this decision was great. outside of that, obviously your ESPN talking heads, they very much think that this was a phenomenal decision. But outside of those very few select groups, nobody agrees with this. Nobody thinks that this was a good decision. If you look at the tweets, if you look at people's posts on X or Twitter or whatever, Instagram, different places, former players and coaches are appalled by this because they played the game. They understand how this is supposed to work. You win and you're rewarded for winning. You're not neglected because you won. I don't think Nick Foles has specifically talked about this, but I'm pretty sure that he would be pretty disgusted by this. And so when you continue to hear former coaches and former players and basically anybody that's not an ESPN talking head at this point, they all kind of echo the same thing. They all kind of say the same thing. Another former player, a Heisman Trophy winner who works for ESPN, also had some comments. Now, he's on Game Day, and he certainly had some comments on ESPN, but he's had more on other shows. He went on with Rich Eisen earlier, and listen to what Dez has to say.
I thought Florida State did everything that they could possibly do, everything within their power. I thought that the excuse about the quarterback getting hurt is very weak because it's not like he got in. Well, listen, Jordan Travis went out. We get that. He's not coming back. But Tate Rodemaker, he was concussed. So I'm thinking, Rich, like within 4 weeks, he could be back playing. So it's just that whole quarterback excuse didn't sit well with me. We've seen opportunities in the past where a team may have lost their starting quarterback and the backup quarterback came in and he played great and they won a national championship. So all of that to me was just an excuse just to get an SEC team in the college football playoff.
So it continues to be echoed. The narrative is very obvious here, and Dez doesn't hold back. I wonder if for some of these ESPN employees, if it is dangerous for them to expose the narrative, if it's worrisome for them to say some of the things that they're saying, if that is, going to cost them their jobs. I mean, it did with Pollock. It has with others who have spoken up against what ESPN and Disney and that conglomerate wants people to think and know and do. I don't know. I don't know that Desmond Howard is getting fired from Game Day for saying that the committee wanted an SEC team in, but let's say he's right. Let's say the committee did want an SEC team in. Why do you think the committee would want an SEC team in? What logical or possible reason would exist for that? The committee doesn't make revenue on games that are shown on ESPN. The committee doesn't get a check of the advertisements that go out. The committee doesn't care, do they? Well, of course not. Boo Corrigan's back in his office in NC State being a coward there. The rest of the committee is back in their offices. They don't care, do they? Well, of course not. They don't care a bit. But does ESPN just control them then? Does ESPN just pull all the strings? Is it all like the WWE? Is it all fake? Is it all a made-for-TV drama? It kind of feels like it. No, I'm not saying the games are fake. Certainly Jordan Travis wouldn't think that. And certainly other guys who have been banged up, Keon and Kalen and Johnny and most of the offensive line, the games aren't fake. But this playoff crap may just be fake. That's what Desmond thinks. Just wanted to get an SEC team in. For somebody that's on College Game Day, that sits next to Reese, and Kirk, and all those guys every Saturday morning, we'll be back with them in just a day on another college football Saturday morning game day episode. It's pretty strong stuff. His accusation, his claim is they just wanted an SEC team in, and they got what they wanted. Another one who has been very outspoken was very outspoken on the selection show. We'll play a clip from that. Again, it's ESPN, so we have to show you a screenshot while his clip plays. But probably Florida State's biggest supporter outside of Adelson and Hale has been Booger McFarland, and he's been phenomenal. Booger used to be here in Tampa. He won Super Bowl with the Colts, actually, after leaving the Bucs but he did local radio here in Tampa, and he was just phenomenal. He did some events that were so much fun down there at Ferg's, at FSU bar in St. Pete before Rays games, and Booger is amazing. I've always loved him. Love his work. He does a great job. He had some thoughts, and his were probably the strongest of anyone's.
Just gone with the undefeated Power 5 champ.
Well, I'm going to completely disagree with you. To me, this is a travesty to the sport because we go out there on the field and we play the game. And regardless of whether it looks good at the quarterback position, regardless of whether we win with offense, whether we win with defense, the name of the game is to win. And that's a reason never before has this not been done. Winning a Power 5 conference, going undefeated, and not getting into the playoff. So I understand we want to look at style points and who are we going to get for the best matchups. But that's not what this is about. This is about understanding to get the 4 best teams. One team has a loss, and that's Alabama. One team doesn't in Florida State. And the fact that this committee could take a Power 5 conference champion that's undefeated, those kids have went out there and busted their behind and not get into the playoff based on the eye test. Mind you, this is the same Alabama team who needed a prayer in Jordan Hare to beat an Auburn team that lost to New Mexico State. So
a travesty to the sport. Really We've said that. Others have used that same exact language, that same verbiage. We all got it from Booger because he said it moments after the reveal. Nobody talked about some of those other things. Nobody mentioned Michigan cheating. Nobody mentioned Alabama struggling with a bad Auburn team that had just lost to New Mexico State. Nobody mentioned the USF game earlier in the year. Nobody mentioned them barely beating some other teams. Nobody mentioned any of that. Nobody mentioned Washington struggling with Washington State. Nobody mentioned the fact that Texas would have another loss if Kansas State could hit an extra point. Nobody mentioned any of that stuff. Of course not. It didn't fit their narrative. Why would you mention those things? This was the path of least resistance. The idea was you could either leave out Texas, because we all would say that Alabama looked better than Texas down the stretch and had the more impressive conference championship win. Beating Georgia was more impressive than beating Oklahoma State. But they couldn't do that. They couldn't do it because of the head-to-head. And so their option was to either leave an SEC team out or have to break Florida State fans' heart. And the easiest thing to do was to find one obscure rule, rank Florida State with the next grouping, like we talked about earlier, and then crush their spirits and crush their dreams and crush their hearts. And they've done a good job. We've been whining about it every day since. But Booger saw through it. Booger understood that it was about ratings. And Booger understood that it was just about getting the best possible TV matchup that you could get. Then the guys went back, I'm appalled. Joey Galloway crying, tears up on the stage. He's another idiot that's just a talking head for ESPN at this point. No mind of his own, no sense to call a spade a spade. But Booger was not afraid to call it out. Booger was not afraid to call it what it is. Complete and total garbage. This last one's kind of fun. It's an interesting one. I think you guys might have mixed feelings on me showing it. That's why I waited until 23 minutes into the video to do it, because I figure if you're still around at this point, you're a diehard and nobody else is really watching. So I feel like you guys will have grace with me one way or the other. But you remember 2 years ago around this time when a certain number 1 overall player tossed a Florida State hat into the crowd, and Florida State fans vowed to hate that kid forever. I never knew that I really was going to hate a kid forever, but some of you did that. When he went back and forth with Hakeem Williams last year around signing day, you got even more emboldened. We did a video on that saying that Hakeem was in the right, and I still believe that way. But one Travis Hunter weighed in on this, was asked about it, and had some thoughts. And for as much as Florida State fans have not liked Travis Hunter over the last 2 years, and I think that's understandable and probably pretty justifiable, even Travis Hunter, a kid who could have taken an opportunity to troll Florida State, a kid who could have taken an opportunity to laugh and make jokes because he is a jokester, he's a clown, he's got like a Jameis Winston personality for sure. This kid could have taken some cheap shots, but instead he said this.
Hey, I don't know how you can go undefeated and still don't be in there, so I don't know what to say. Just because you lost a player don't mean anything. I don't know how you can go undefeated and then just get kicked out of college football playoffs. Ain't that what we all plan for, to be in the playoffs, though? win the championship. Jordan Charles was trying to stand on business. They already did what they did, so they deserve to be in there. They went undefeated, 13-0 for no reason. It's crazy. I wish he did never break his leg, but he definitely didn't get it right.
Yeah, I mean, pretty straightforward there. Hunter says that's not the way it should have gone down. They absolutely should have been in. What's the point of playing the games? You play to go undefeated. They went undefeated. They should be in the playoff. He showed sympathy for Travis. He wishes he would have never broken his leg. He understood and sympathized with the team. Listen, Hunter is probably still not your favorite guy. I don't think one statement's going to undo that. But I do think that he showed some maturity. I do think he showed a lot more maturity than Kirk Herbstreit did. I think he showed a lot more maturity than Boo Corrigan or Reese Davis or Joey Galloway or Greg McElroy. I think he showed a lot more maturity than any of those guys. And so you can still not like Hunter. You don't have to be best friends with him. You don't have to cheer for him all year next year. But that's a really talented kid who certainly could have taken a chance to take a cheap shot. That's a kid that's going to probably be in the NFL soon. And he still, despite everything else, probably still has a little place in his heart for Florida State. Grew up very close, grew up a fan supposedly, and he still called out the BS. He still called out the worst travesty that we've ever seen in college football. What's it rival? To me, it rivals the some of the snubs that you've had in past years. Oklahoma State, when they went undefeated. Miami in 2000, people talk about. There are other ones. Florida State having to play Florida in a rematch. That's stupid. But nothing compares to this one. Miami lost a game. That's why they got eliminated. Florida State never lost. Some other teams lost games, and that's why Florida got into theirs. It's not so bad. Oklahoma State played a terrible schedule and probably was going to get waxed if they got into that championship that LSU ended up winning. Nothing was ever like this one, where at least in the Oklahoma State one, you had 2 spots and 3 teams that were all undefeated. In this one, you had 4 spots and 3 teams that were undefeated. It was as clear as day. It was as obvious as could be. And honestly, hats off to the ESPN and the SEC folks that are not afraid of the truth. Hats off to the folks who absolutely don't care about falling in line. They're not worried about breaking rank. They are absolutely just going to tell the truth no matter what. Dan Mullen, Booger McFarland, Travis Hunter, Desmond Drinkowitz, Jayden Daniels, RG3. Some of the biggest names in our sport. Not afraid of what ESPN's backlash may be. Not afraid of what the SEC's backlash may be. You think Commissioner Greg Sankey from the SEC wants to hear his Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, Jayden Daniels, talk like this to say that Alabama shouldn't have been in? You think they want to hear Drinkowitz talking like that? You don't think Sankey's making some calls? You don't think Sankey's saying, hey guys, shut up. We have a company line around here, and it is you do not step out of line. You do not say things that are anti-ESPN or anti-SEC. You do not insult the incestuous, awful, gross, disgusting relationship that is ESPN and the SEC. ESPN is tied in with the ACC and some other conferences as well, and they would cut those other conferences off at the throat. The SEC was going to be inconvenienced in just the slightest way. And that's what they've done in this. They absolutely did that here, and I'd assume that this won't be the last time you see it. It's unfortunate. Hopefully, now that it's Friday morning, we are done whining about this. We can kind of move on a little bit. Wanted to do one more video, wanted to highlight the folks at ESPN and in the SEC, and then a little shout out there to Travis Hunter as well. Shout those folks out. Say that we appreciate them for taking a stand for the truth, and hopefully you enjoyed me putting this together so that all of these were in one spot as well. If you didn't, good news for you. We'll go back to recruiting. We'll go back to the team stuff. We'll go back to transfer portal, probably coming up in our very next video. But who knows? You guys have liked this week, so you guys have gotten to go through it with me. It's been cathartic. We've done 4 videos on it now. I think we did one video that wasn't about this. We had one on some recruiting stuff, some portal stuff. But yeah, we've done 4 videos on it now. I think we're probably wrapped up. This probably ends the series. But who knows? I could get a wild hair tomorrow and do another one, come out Saturday morning. So appreciate you guys for hanging out through this week. Appreciate you guys watching. Hit the Patreon. If you've made it 30 minutes of listening to me ramble about this, go hit the Patreon, patreon.com/DFNS. Appreciate you guys. Love you. Go Noles.